What's up guys, my name is Redwing and welcome to another video. I've got a really exciting one here for you today. In Revenge of the Sith, Obi-Wan takes on the difficult challenge to duel his former apprentice Anakin Skywalker, who has turned to the dark side and become Darth Vader. The duel ends in Obi-Wan's favor as he obtains the high ground and leaves Anakin for dead on the lava bank. But what if Anakin was somehow able to flip over Obi-Wan successfully and ultimately kill him? Without any further ado, let's begin with today's story, partially inspired by the alternate ending of the Revenge of the Sith video game. Our story begins on the planet MUSTAFAR, where Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi dueled ferociously over the lava river. The air shimmered with heat as Anakin and Obi-Wan clashed in a furious dance of blue blades. The duel raged across catwalks and machinery, sparks flying as metal met plasma. The duel goes similarly to how it does in the original timeline, up until Obi-Wan gains the high ground. Anakin, consumed by rage and the dark side's power, refused defeat. He was tired of everyone always underestimating him, and after today, no one would ever underestimate him again. He gathered the Force, leapt high, higher than before, soaring past Obi-Wan's defenses. His saber ignited as he landed behind his former master. Obi-Wan is instantly taken by surprise and had no time to react before Anakin's blade stabbed through his back, ending the duel in a single final strike, directly through his heart. Anakin withdraws the blade, and Obi-Wan dies before he even hits the ground. Anakin, triumphant and ego running high, kicks Obi-Wan into the lava bank, and he watches as Obi-Wan's corpse is ultimately cremated as a result of the lava. Once the body is completely scorched and burned to a crisp, Anakin leaves the scene, now fully consumed by the dark side, as Sidious's ship flies overhead. But first, Anakin needed to get to Padme, for she was the only thing that was currently on his mind. He reaches Padme's ship with a determination unseen by the likes of either Jedi or Sith. However, as Anakin was about to walk up the ramp, the air around him seemed to vibrate with unseen power as a sudden, invisible force yanked him backwards, slamming him into the ground. His lightsaber skittered from his grasp. He growled in rage, struggling to rise. From the shuttle ramp, Emperor Palpatine descended, his face wreathed in shadows. Lightning crackled faintly at his fingertips. Palpatine congratulates Anakin on his victory, and comments that his anger is powerful, but that it needed to be controlled or it would destroy him. Anakin glared at him, screaming that he had done what Sidious had wanted. Kenobi was dead. He would save his wife from death, and the galaxy would fall under their rule. Palpatine's eyes gleamed with satisfaction, and he laughs as he says the words, "Yes, my apprentice, but first, you have much to learn." Inside the Naboo starship, 3PO and R2 had dragged Padme aboard. She was unconscious, her breathing labored. R2 would frantically tell 3PO to begin to prep the ship for departure. 3PO momentarily thinks that R2 has lost his circuits for a moment, but when R2 explains that something had changed within Anakin, and that Anakin was the reason why Padme was like this in the first place, 3PO finally listened. The engines whined to life, the ramp retracting. But before the ship could lift off, Anakin, knowing that they were attempting their escape, extended his hand and clenched it into a fist. The starship shuddered violently as it tried to ascend. Anakin's face contorted with fury, his outstretched hand trembling as he tried to pull it back down with the Force, and as he roared with a rage that was never seen before. Inside the cockpit, R2 beeped frantically, struggling to compensate for the added strain. The engines roared louder, smoke pouring from the vents as the ship strained against the invisible grip. Sidious watched with mild amusement, then extended his own hand. With a subtle gesture, he added to Anakin's pull, testing his apprentice's strength and obedience. The ship was caught in a deadly tug-of-war between the droid's desperate efforts to escape and the combined might of the Sith Lords. Anakin's eyes burned with rage as he felt Sidious's influence. No, she was his, Anakin screamed. He would not lose her. Sidious's smile twisted into something cold and cruel.
Then prove it, Lord Vader. Prove to me that you know the full power of the dark side.
Anakin's rage intensified. He poured every ounce of his strength into his grip, veins bulging at his temples. The starship began to buckle, metal screeching in protest. Inside, R2 wailed as he realized that the ship was losing power. 3PO attempted to say something, but a final shriek of metal tore through the air as the ship crumpled like a tin can. The engines exploded in a fireball, hurling debris across the landing platform. Anakin's eyes widened as flames engulfed the ship as he howled the word "No," his scream echoing into the fiery night. Sidious would approach, placing a hand on Anakin's shoulder.
She was weak, my apprentice. You must learn to let go of all that you fear to lose.
Anakin collapsed to his knees, staring at the flaming wreckage. Tears, hot and angry, spilled from his eyes. He didn't mean for this to happen. All he wanted was to save his wife from certain death, but his actions had led to the thing which he had feared most. Sidious's expression hardened.
Then let this be your final lesson, Lord Vader. Compassion is for the weak. Only through the dark side can you achieve true power.
Anakin's eyes flickered, torn between grief and rage, and asked Sidious to teach him. Teach him to become the most powerful being in the galaxy. Sidious's smile returned.
So be it, Lord Vader.
Padme's fate remained uncertain, though the explosion had scattered debris across the landing pad. Whether she had survived was unknown, but Anakin knew that Padme had survived. He had faked his grief, even though it had felt very, very real to him. Anakin, now fully immersed in the dark side, and now having fully become Darth Vader, followed Sidious back to Coruscant. Together, they began their reign of terror. The Jedi Order was crushed. The Republic was now reorganized into the Galactic Empire, and the galaxy fell into darkness under the rule of Emperor Palpatine and his fearsome enforcer, Darth Vader. But in the shadows of Mustafar, among the wreckage of the starship, something small stirred. A faint flicker of life. A secret that would one day challenge the darkness itself. Anakin's howl still echoed in the night, but the flames had begun to die down, leaving a skeletal husk of what had once been a vessel of hope. Inside the charred remains, R2-D2's systems flickered to life. His photoreceptor dimmed, but functional. He warbled weakly, scanning the wreckage for any signs of Padme. Amidst the smoke and debris, he detected a faint, rhythmic sound, a fragile heartbeat. R2 rolled forward, his dome pivoting until his sensor locked onto Padme's unconscious form, shielded by a collapsed bulkhead and a completely destroyed medical capsule. She was battered and bruised, her breathing shallow but steady. R2 extended a small manipulator arm and, with mechanical tenderness, gently lifted the wreckage from her. Padme moaned, her eyes fluttering open, barely able to comprehend the devastation around her as she whispered hoarsely for R2. R2 whistled a low, urgent note, signaling that help was needed. Padme's hand instinctively moved to her swollen belly. To her relief, the child that she still carried still lived within her, as a tiny beacon of hope amidst the darkness that had engulfed the galaxy. R2 realized that every second counted. Activating an emergency transmitter, he broadcast a distress signal into the night sky, hoping that someone, anyone, would pick up the beacon. Back on Coruscant, the galaxy's once proud capital had become a fortress of darkness. Under Sidious's iron-fisted rule, the Senate had crumbled, replaced by a web of fear and oppression. Anakin, no, Darth Vader, stood by his master's side as the Empire's enforcer. His eyes, burning gold with the corruption of the dark side, spoke of his side of the story in the Jedi's assassination attempt on Palpatine, and revealed his marriage to Padme, now completely and utterly consumed by the dark side. And yet, a tiny ember of doubt still smoldered, buried deep beneath layers of rage and betrayal. Sidious watched his apprentice with a mixture of satisfaction and caution. Vader's power had grown exponentially, but so had his unpredictability. The Sith Lord knew that he needed to keep his apprentice on a short leash. He assigned Vader to hunt down the surviving Jedi, turning the galaxy into a graveyard for the last remnants of the Old Order. Meanwhile, on Mustafar, the faint distress signal emitted by R2-D2 had not gone unnoticed. The Tantive 4, piloted by none other than Bail Organa, descended towards the smoldering ruins. He had come in search of answers, having intercepted reports of Anakin's betrayal and the Republic's collapse. Bail stepped cautiously from his ship, blaster in hand. R2 rolled to meet him, projecting a hologram of Padme's current status. Bail's eyes widened as he saw the young senator, his friend, clinging to life. Bail ordered R2 to get her aboard. They needed to get her to a medical center, and quickly. R2 beeped in agreement, guiding Bail to Padme. As they lifted her gently, Padme's eyes fluttered open again as she called Bail by name. Bail told Padme that she was safe now, and that he was there to get her out of this forsaken planet. Tears filled her eyes as she whispered about the life that was still alive inside of her. Bail's heart sank. He hadn't known, but there was no time to process it now, as he promised to get her to safety. Hours later, aboard Bail's ship in hyperspace, Padme gave birth to Luke and Leia. She was weak, her body broken by stress and betrayal, but a fierce maternal determination kept her going. Bail held her hand as the med droid tended to the newborns, and he informed her that she was now safe. She nodded, her eyes drifting shut as she asked Bail to promise that the twins would be safe. Bail whispered to her that he gave his word. Padme took one last, shuddering breath, then fell still, dying from heartbreak, as was her destiny. Bail Organa stared at the twin infants, symbols of both hope and heartbreak. He would keep his promise. He would hide them, protect them from their father and the darkness that had now consumed the galaxy. Little did anyone know that Darth Vader's children would one day rise to challenge him, and bring about the end of the empire he now served. And somewhere in the shadows, the ember of resistance began to glow, small but unyielding. Later, on Naboo, the bells of Theed tolled softly, a sorrowful day in tribute of a fallen queen. The streets were lined with mourners dressed in flowing black, heads bowed as Padme's casket glided through the solemn crowd. Among the hidden figures in the shadows, one stood apart, her hood drawn low, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Ahsoka Tano watched the procession in silence, the weight of recent events heavy on her shoulders. She hadn't been there when Padme passed, hadn't even known the senator was dying. She'd been too busy on Mandalore, capturing Maul and wrestling with the Sith's cryptic warnings. Only now did the truth fully dawn. Maul had been right about Anakin's fate, and she'd been too blind or too loyal to see it. As the last notes of the funeral song faded, Ahsoka retreated into the secluded gardens of the palace. There she felt a familiar presence in the Force, a beacon of wisdom and sorrow. Yoda then emerged from a hidden alcove, his small form nearly lost in the shadows. He greeted Ahsoka, his ears drooping in grief as he sensed the pain and loss inside of her. Ahsoka clenched her fists, tears stinging her eyes as she mourned the fact that she had not been able to save Anakin and that Maul had warned her about what would happen if she didn't try. Now those same warnings were coming back to haunt her. Yoda nodded gravely as he admits to her that yes, Anakin has fallen, and that the galaxy was now a very dangerous place, but that there was still hope. Ahsoka's eyes widened as Yoda lifted a small holo projector from his cloak. It flickered to life, revealing Bail Organa holding twin newborns, Luke and Leia. Yoda explains that these were Anakin's children and that they must be hidden and protected. Ahsoka's face hardened with resolve as a new purpose suddenly revealed itself to her through the Force. She nodded, agreeing to help Yoda protect them. Yoda's expression grew solemn as he then explains that he needed to go to the Outer Rim to prepare a sanctuary for the children, and that she needed to travel alone for now and watch over them. She bowed her head in understanding, and the two Force users parted ways. Meanwhile, in the ruins of an abandoned separatist stronghold, Maul crouched before a smoldering brazier. His eyes glowed with simmering rage as he stared into the flickering flames. The galaxy had changed overnight. His old master's plan had come to fruition, and the Jedi Order lay in ruins. Anakin Skywalker had fallen just as Maul had foreseen, but Sidious had once again bested him through manipulation alone, leaving Maul broken and hunted. Yet Maul's hate remained unbroken and unyielding. He reached to his side only to grasp empty air where his lightsaber had once hung. He had dropped the weapon when he lost to Ahsoka on Mandalore, when it fell forever towards the city of Sundari. Now he was left defenseless, a warrior without his blade. His lip curled in disgust as he closed his eyes, seeing visions of a galaxy plunged into tyranny, a vision that gave him no peace. Vengeance was all that was left, he hissed to himself, as he opened a nearby crate, rummaging through his contents. Broken droids, power cells, discarded weaponry. Pieces of a scavenged hilt caught his eye, however. The components of a lightsaber. Worn, incomplete, but salvageable. A spark of determination lit his gaze. Black stone towers loomed over rivers of molten rock on Mustafar, casting the fortress in a freakish glow. Darth Vader knelt before a dark altar, the crimson light of a corrupted kyber crystal bleeding across his face. Pain, raw and excruciating, lanced through him as he forced the crystal to bend to his will. When the deed was done, he rose, the red blade of his lightsaber humming with hate. But the darkness did not grant him peace. Instead, a sharp pain in the Force cut through his heart, a cold emptiness where once there had been warmth. He staggered, clutching the altar as he had felt the true death of Padme in the Force. He had planned to find her after he overthrew Sidious, but now those plans were utterly ruined, for through the Force, he felt her death. the final severing of a bond he cherished. His eyes burned as memories crashed over him. Her laughter, her tears, her whispered promises of a life together. And then, nothing. Anakin Skywalker may have loved her more than life itself, but it was him, as the evil Darth Vader, who had killed her. In raw fire! A scream of rage and grief tore from his throat, echoing through the fortress. What have I done? He thought to himself. But Sidious's voice whispered, dark and oily, in his mind.
Use your pain. Let it fuel your power. She is dead, my friend. Not even the power of the dark side can bring her back. But in her death, she has given you pain. A final parting gift to push you further into the dark side of the Force.
Anakin's eyes, tinged with red, narrowed. The darkness surged, burning away the doubt, but not entirely, even as he descended deeper into the abyss. A small flicker of Anakin Skywalker still mourned. Yoda spoke to Ahsoka through the hologram, while Ahsoka was in hyperspace. His expression grave as he spoke of the plan to protect the children. He had already spoken to Bail, agreeing to have Yoda and Ahsoka take both children. Ahsoka nodded, determination shining through her tears, promising to not let Anakin's mistakes destroy his children's future. Yoda's ears drooped as he prepared to end the call, wishing that the Force be with her. As he vanished, Ahsoka felt a chill in the Force, a darkness gathering in the galaxy. But her purpose was clear. Protect the twins until Yoda finds a sanctuary for himself, Ahsoka, Leia, and Luke. Honor Padme's memory, and hold on to the spark of hope that might one day redeem Anakin Skywalker. Well, folks, that is part 1 of our story today, and I will make a video covering part 2 as well, but I want to leave part 2 up to you guys first, actually. So I want to hear from you in the comments. What do you think will happen from this point in the story? Before part 2 comes out, you, the fans, will come up with ideas for part 2 of what if Anakin killed Obi-Wan on Mustafar. Before we end, I'd just like to point out that 85% of those who view my videos are not yet subscribed, so do subscribe if you're new. It would really mean a lot to me if you did. Also, feel free to donate to the GoFundMe if you feel so inclined. This is just a fundraiser that I've started so that I can try to help my girlfriend through a financial crisis that could actually end up leaving her homeless. There is zero pressure to donate, but any and all donations would be very much appreciated. With that said, do leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, turn on those notifications if you're already subscribed so you don't miss a thing, follow my Instagram at Star Wars Red Wing. Thanks for watching, may the Force be with you, and I'll see y'all later.